Hello, thank you very much for the opportunity to present some of my data today. My name is Cameron Wilson. I'm a scientist with the African Swine Fever Prevention and Preparedness Project as part of Biosecurity Queensland, and I've been working on the spatial ecology of feral pigs. Now, as you all know, feral pig management is very hard. There's so many variables to consider when developing a management program, and so many other political, legal, and social aspects to negotiate as well. And on top of that, we're targeting an animal that is built to survive. You know, pigs are highly adaptable. They're really opportunistic, and can eat a wide variety of different food types. And because of their capacity to breed and emigrate into new areas, we actually need to remove around 50 to 70% of an expanding population in a good season just to keep it stable. But that can be really, really hard to do, particularly if the control tool we're using is not very well suited to the environment that we're actually working in. And we don't really know whether the management tools that we have are actually achieving such high levels of control. So I've been conducting a literature review on all available feral pig control tools and comparing the success in terms of population reduction, the cost per pig, and the efficiency. Overall, I reviewed 90-something papers, and 33 of these provided enough data for the population reduction and efficiency. But for today's presentation, I've actually left out a lot of other control tools that we reviewed, as otherwise we'd be here all day. So I've just included 6 of the most common methods. Now, as you can see there straight away, there's obviously a fair difference between each of the control methods here. You know, with population reduction, aerial shooting's up around 73%. Hunting with dogs is around 33.6%. There's also, vast differences in the cost per pig and efficiency as well. Now, the cost per pig, that was taken out of the papers if the paper reported on the cost per pig. And we put that through an inflation calculator to bring it into today's money. The efficiency of pigs killed per time, most of the time that was pigs per hour. In the case of trapping, no, that was pigs per trap night. And we just assumed a 24-hour trap night, and then obviously divided by that to divided by 24 to get to pigs per hour. Now, in the cost per pig, this is not always truly reflective of real life situations. In the case of ground baiting with grain, you can see they're $258 per pig. That was where people actually have to physically buy the grain as well. But in most real life situations, the people can source small grain from traders, and that's obviously very, very low cost or free. So the cost here is not, I guess, truly representative of what it is in real life. The problem in comparing methods like this, not just the control tools, but the studies that they came from. In the case of trapping, it had 8 different papers that we reviewed just for trapping. When we're comparing control tools like this and all the papers that they're associated with it, they're so vastly different in terms of the study site, the environment, the pigs at those sites, their exposure to any prior control, how they overcome neophobia, things like that, and particularly how much effort is actually put in. And that means you need to take this with a grain of salt. Just because it says, aerial shooting, average population reduction 73%, doesn't mean that you're going to achieve that every single time. It's like a plane, a car, and a boat. An aeroplane is very efficient. It can carry a lot of people and can go very, very, long distances very quickly. But you're not going to take a 747 to fly to your mate's place down the road for a barbecue. In that case, it'd be very inefficient. And likewise, you're not going to use a car to drive to New Zealand. So each control tool, what I mean by that is each control tool here is specific to the situation in which it was recorded in. Just because it says aerial shooting achieves 73% doesn't mean you're going to achieve that as well. The other thing with efficiency is that it's often recorded initially, and as control programs progress, the amount of effort required increases exponentially, and the efficiency will go down. Santa Cruz, for example, an island off the California coast, they had an eradication program for pigs there. Initial control for aerial shooting, initial efficiency, I should say, for aerial shooting was 120 pigs per hour. But over the 411-day eradication program, that was actually reduced down to 8.7 pigs per hour. So you can see how this data can be skewed by when people report the data. Any of these other strategies here, could theoretically achieve similar population reductions to aerial shooting, but would require a much higher effort or be achieved over an even longer time period. In the case of hunting with dogs, obviously you can see there it's 33.6%, but it has been used in eradication programs before. And another island example, Santiago Island in the Galapagos Chains, they eradicated pigs using a combination of hunting with dogs and a bit of ground baiting with meat as well, but mostly it was dogs. But it took 32 years and something like 37,000 hunted days to do it. So it is achievable, but requires a lot longer time period and a lot higher effort. What we essentially have is two buckets. We have a population reduction bucket and we have an efficiency bucket. And the highest efficiency is the highest population reduction from the least amount of effort and the least amount of time. If you remove one pig in the first minute, your efficiency is going to be 60 pigs per hour, but obviously your population reduction is going to be very low. So to increase population reduction, it costs effort and it costs time, because as population reduction goes up, the density of the pigs go down, which makes it harder to find them, and it takes more effort and more time, and therefore erodes your efficiency. But if we aim to be more strategic in our approach to feral pigs and target areas of high use, for example, theoretically, we can achieve higher population reductions at the same time as achieving higher efficiencies. So to be more strategic in our approach, we need to increase the opportunity that a pig finds and interacts with a control tool, be it a bait, a trap, whatever it is. And to increase the opportunity, we need to understand more about the pig. And we need to do that, really, we need to gather information on the feral pigs, where they go, what they do, what they like, what they eat, and we use that to our advantage. So DAF has been working with collaboration with Darren Marshall from Southern Queensland Landscapes, and we've had 59 collared pigs across 4 sites. 3 of those in Queensland, Arcadia Valley and Downfall Creek. You can see there near Rolleston and Miles. Gabba Islands was their 3rd site in Queensland. It's in the Torres Strait Islands. And Pallarang was their 4th site, which is east of Canberra, Queanbeyan area. And a key finding with this project is that pigs are spending 50% of their time in just 9% of the entire area of the home range. And this is a comparison between the home range and the core range. The home range is where a pig spends 90% of its time, and the core range is where a pig spends 50% of its time. And this map helps to explain what it means. So the core range is the densest 50% of its activity. In this case, the core range is the yellow area of this map. The red area, that's the home range, that's where the pig is spending 90% of its time. And the last 10% of its time is spent outside the red area. So that's all those dots outside that red area. But because core range is not just 9% of the size of the home range, it means that we only target this particular area. In theory, we could save 91% of our resources, but still maintain the opportunity of a pig encountering a control tool at 50%. So to investigate, what the cause of these areas is, I've been looking at habitat preference in terms of shelter by testing for selection of habitat with regards to canopy cover. And what that shows is that pigs are preferring habitat with a canopy cover of between 21 to 40%, and avoidance for very open country, so 0 to 10%, and any country with a greater than 50% canopy cover. And overall, 91% of pigs are demonstrating a preference for anything between 11 to 50% canopy cover. That animation on the left-hand side there is depicting the movements of this particular pig over I think it was just over a year, 378 days, I think it was. Each of those yellow points is a half-hourly location for that particular pig, and it just plays in a loop, so it'll continuously play there. And this clearly demonstrates an avoidance of that thick vegetation on the right-hand side of the map, which is actually, in this case, a national park. And you can see how the pig goes up into the little valleys, I suppose, of that national park, or near the national park, but not directly into it. And this information is, I guess, contradictory to a lot of anecdotal evidence and some previous research, which says that pigs prefer denser vegetation. But this research goes to show that, pigs, I guess that's site specific. Pigs will live and breed in whatever environment's easiest and best for them. In this particular case, the farmland provides everything that pig needs. This national park is quite hilly and quite rugged country, and I guess it would provide a harder lifestyle for a pig than the farmland provides. Another method I've been working on is this method called a recurse analysis, and it counts the revisitations of pigs to certain areas. So it records a pig in a certain point, and if it goes to back to that point within 50 metres of that particular point within the lifetime of its collaring, it counts that as a second revisitation. And we tally that up over the lifetime of the collaring, and then we take off the top 15% of those and count them as the highly revisited points. And this pie chart here is representing what the feature of those particular highly used points were. As you can see, 44% of those are related to water. Quite a large proportion of those are in different densities of vegetation. And the rest of there are split between cultivation, 3.9%, food subsidies, 3.9%, and then 2.7% respectively for roads and tracks and rocky ridges. Food subsidies, I should clarify, are places where pigs can access any non-natural food, so places like feedlots, dump sites, dead pits, human habitations, anywhere they could find a source of food that has derived from human activity. And we can use this data to our advantage for targeting them, for targeting pigs. And we can also measure these particular sites. This is just this pie chart just represents what was at that direct feature, direct point on satellite imagery. But we can also measure those points to habitat covariates as well. And this chart represents distance to water, which is along the x-axis there, and the counter revisitations along the y-axis. You can see there's some of those recurse points, these highly revisited points, upwards to nearly 500 revisitations, so they're very, very highly used points. And this chart, that blue line indicates what we call a trend line. So because it's going down, what that indicates is that the further away from a water source a pig is, the less likely it is to revisit that particular site. Overall, 50% of all the highly revisited points are within 150 metres of a water source. And this is really interesting because with the likes of tracks, 50% of those are within 550 metres of a water source. And this is particularly useful for I guess, for baiting campaigns, because a lot of baiting that happens, in Western Queensland, I know of particularly, but it's not done by air, it's done by vehicles along the tracks. And this begs the question that are we wasting their time and effort baiting along tracks when the majority of pigs' time are spent within 150 metres of a distance to water. With dam-related points, so 93% of all dam-related points are exclusively located on the inlet side of a dam. And this SAT image here describes what I mean. So these white polygons, that's the highly revisited point, the recurse point. And you can see there, both of these particular points are located on the inlet side, so on the creek, where the creek is coming into those dams. And I guess this makes sense because that's obviously, shallower water. It's a shallower bank angle going in as well. There's probably more vegetation there, and there's also probably more food there. So it's a great spot for wallowing. But this is also a great spot for us to do any surveillance for pigs and any control for feral pigs, because we know they're going to be using these locations a lot. So it increases the opportunity of actually targeting the pigs or finding the pigs. With the points that were within vegetation, 89% of those are within 150 metres of the border with open vegetation. And I've used that 150 metre number there again, so it's a nice, easy figure for you to remember. So, 50% of points are within 150 metres of water, and with all those points that are within woody vegetation, 89% are within 150 metres of the border with open vegetation. And again, this site provides a great spot for surveillance or control for feral pigs. And I guess it goes against what a lot of anecdotal evidence has said as well, that pigs, live in deep forest, they love heavy vegetation. And this goes to show that they do use it, but they're not going deep into it. They're just on that sort of that border. This particular picture, obviously you can see there it's a very narrow strip of vegetation. This was the anomaly. Most of these points were actually, on expansive stretches of vegetation. But obviously the recurse points are quite close to the edges of the border with open vegetation. And what we can do is when we overlay water courses and we combine that, I've run this through an intersection tool in R to intersect buffer zones of 150 metres either side of a water course, crossed over with the 20 to 40% canopy cover. We can create, I guess, estimations or areas where feral pigs are more likely to be using within the environment. And these, I guess, provide great locations for surveillance and control, but it's good from a desktop macro view if you're doing organising broad scale pig control, but it's not particularly useful for those on the ground. It's just a map. So, have a think about the feral pigs on your land. What they need most. They need food, water, and shelter. So, have a think about those locations on your land, and target those particular environments. They don't necessarily have to be like this picture here, where this particular recast point that obviously has water and vegetation, but also has cultivation there, so food source. It doesn't have to be all those points located in one, because pigs will obviously travel. They can travel up to about, males travel about 5 kilometres a day. But they're the locations where pigs are going to be using within the environment. But aside from that, there are other sites within the environment that pigs use that present, higher biosecurity risk, and these don't represent the large amount of these recast points for these pigs, but there are those points that are, I guess, a higher risk, places where pigs might access, prohibited feed, for example. This animation here obviously doesn't show us too much. You can see that pig moves around quite a bit of the vegetation there. Split between open and woody vegetation. But you can see there's a congregation of points there in the bottom section of the map. And the inset there, you can see that there's actually 3 of these recast points. If we zoom up on that, we can have a look at them in a bit more detail. Now, the 2 on the left-hand side there just points in woody vegetation with a bit of gullies, so it's obviously there for shelter. But it's the one on the right-hand side that we're particularly interested in, because this is actually a dump site on a farm, and the recurse analysis can actually give us some pretty cool statistics with how often pigs visit these sites. You can see there, this pig visited this dump site 54 times over 39 nights. Most of the time it was just once per night, but the maximum time was actually 3 times in a night. Visitations averaged between 9 minutes and 4.5 hours, and it arrived there near midnight every single night. And this is really great information to to put out there and talk to landholders about, to emphasise the importance of fencing their land, because pigs use these sites. They use dump sites, they use dead pits, and these are places where pigs can access prohibited feed, and potentially cause a emergency animal disease outbreak. This is another pig here in Arcadia Valley, similar case. There's not a huge amount of points for this particular pig, but there's a congregation of points down here. And again, you can see this pig actually had quite a few recurse points there. But again, the one we're interested in is this particular one here, and you can see that that is another dump site. And this just re-emphasises the importance of fencing these places. I think the statistic was between November 2018 and December 2020, federal Biosecurity, Australian Biosecurity, they seized 42.8 tonnes worth of pork coming in through, or uncooked pork products coming in through airports. So it just goes to show how much, of it could be potentially coming into Australia, and all it takes is a little bit that's, infected with diseases like African swine fever, foot and mouth, be thrown into a pit like this. A feral pig accesses it, and we potentially have a emergency animal disease on our hands. Not only this particular case, you can see there's cattle there as well. So these cattle look like they have access to this particular site, and that's obviously an animal welfare biosecurity issue as well, with cattle accessing things like lead batteries, that sort of thing. Another pig here. There's quite a few of these recurse points. Most of those are in distant vegetation there along a creek line. The 2 that we're interested in are these 2 over here. The one in the top left corner there, you can see straight away, that's actually a feedlot. So again, this is a very high biosecurity risk. You've got feral pigs interacting with domestic livestock, which, potential for disease spread there. This pig, I think, accessed this site something like 200 times. So it was there nearly every night for a good part of a year. The other site there is actually a feed trough. So again, the same principle, you've got domestic livestock interacting with feral pigs. And this is a biosecurity risk, not so much from a spool feeding perspective like the dump sites are, but because it's a site that's high risk of disease transfer. Other places as well. This pig here was accessing this particular point here. It's silos near a human habitation. So there's obviously human houses here and up on the top right-hand corner as well. And this provides, not so much a biosecurity risk, but it's obviously a food source for this particular pig, which we can easily restrict. And we want to prevent pigs from accessing feed sites that they wouldn't naturally have access to. The dump sites is an example. Again, it's a food source pigs might be able to rely upon in dry periods when they would be otherwise restricted by their natural or naturally available food. Again, a similar one here. This particular point is some silos near some yards, and there's also a dam there as well. And our last slide here, this is actually two pigs. You can see the bottom recast point. There's actually two recast points that overlap in there. So this is actually two pigs at this particular site. And these are grain feeders in, I think, a cell grazing situation. So again, it's a food source for these pigs, which we need to restrict their access to, so we have better control in dry times. And it's also a risk for a biosecurity risk at these sites. So in summary, if we can target feral pigs more strategically by putting our control tools in specific locations like what you see on the screen there, hopefully we'll achieve much higher population reduction and efficiency at the same time as reducing our cost and effort. Controlling pigs in this way obviously requires more planning, but the execution is likely to result in greater success, and that at the end of the day is what we're really after. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is that this work doesn't include every single landscape across Australia. So for some of the control tools, for some of the landscapes in your area, this could be totally different. But how we go about controlling pigs is really site-specific and scenario-specific as well. And we need to evolve with every single situation. But because nothing works perfectly, we need to counteract that. So what we need is a sustained, nil tenure and integrated approach that strategically targets pigs in different ways. Isolated control events, which, events that are not repeated or followed up by additional control, are rapidly compensated for by breeding and immigration of feral pigs. But repeated control allows for a higher exposure of feral pigs to control tools. There's also a need for a collaborative approach where everybody's involved. And we know this already because properties that manage feral pigs in isolation will not have long-term control or long-term success if pigs are transitional across their land. And combining control tools is also really important because no control tool used on its own regularly achieves the population reduction required, and pigs can learn to avoid control tools as well. So we need to target pigs in as many different ways as we can. And if we do that strategically by targeting specific locations like what we've talked about, we'll hopefully achieve a higher population reduction at the same time as higher efficiency. But thank you very much, guys. I appreciate your attention today. And if you have any questions, please fire away.